Hello, hello, hello everybody, I am Jmulls of Jmulls Gaming, and it's time, once again, to break my will to live. It's some Final Fantasy XIV Hot Takes, people! Last time I paid my dues and provided my own hot takes, but we're circling back! You all are up on the chopping block. No longer am I in the crossfire. It's all of you! I have some hot takes provided by you, the community. I asked for them to be scorching. I want them peppery. I want them hot. I want you to try and break me. Let's see if you can. I have to react to your hot takes. Leave yours in the comments down below. Your hottest, spiciest hot takes for Final Fantasy XIV, and I may react to them in a future video. Now let's get ready to rumble! We have at EDN01987 teeing us off with hot take. This expansion is more enjoyable than Endwalker. And yeah, this one's gonna be a bit of a spicy boy for quite a few people out there. But as I'm starting to realize when it comes to quite a few of your hot takes, I actually kind of agree. Now, not fully, and it requires, egads, nuance. So let's talk about it. When it comes to the main story, no secret that I'm not that big of a fan of Dawntrail, and I'm a massive fan of Endwalker. So when it comes to the actual MSQ, Endwalker clears 9 days out of 7 for me. Not even remotely close. However, when we're talking about the actual content, the dungeons, the raids, and when I'm looking ahead to the future content that is going to come into Final Fantasy XIV Dawntrail, content-wise, playing the game-wise, yeah, I think I agree. I think Dawntrail's better than Endwalker in that regard. Fight design is more creative and just fun. And it could be, at least this next pod, in some part because I've gone tank in Dawntrail and I skipped out on it largely in Endwalker. But I've been enjoying playing the game more when I do play because I'm a tank now. I think it just synergizes with what I enjoy more, and I never gave it a proper fair shot all the way before, and I largely just played Reaper and Endwalker, and I can't say I enjoy DPS all that much nowadays in Final Fantasy XIV, but I have been really enjoying tanking, so you pair that up with the content being really fun to play, and yeah, there you go. Now, I haven't done all the role quests yet, at least for Endwalker, but premise-wise, I enjoy them more than in Dawntrail, though, again, massive disclaimer, I've barely started them in Dawntrail, so we'll need to see. But I think if you tend to prefer the story, chances are you'll prefer Endwalker. If you care more about the content, about the combat specifically, then chances are you'll probably enjoy Dawntrail more than Endwalker. At least while doing the dungeons, there were a couple of difficulty spikes in Endwalker, but not all that much in the grand scheme of things. I tend to find Dawntrail to be faster paced in that regard, and just having a tendency to throw more mechanics at you and have them overlap with each other more often. I personally enjoy that. We have at U2ism, who says, hot take, if Dawntrail taught me anything, it's that there can be such a thing as too much happiness. Now I get that this one's a bit tongue-in-cheek, and bit of a more of a joke, but let's actually kind of dissect it a little bit. It gives me a chance to yap. When it comes to the execution of a story, right, we are coming off the back of a 10-year-long saga with the Hydaelyn Zodiac arc. It got really deep, dark, emotional, existential, right? So a mood shift and bringing the stakes down, in my opinion, was warranted and needed. You can't just keep going up and up and up, because then eventually it just gets ridiculous and you stop caring about stakes because you don't have much emotional investment in it because you know how the story is going to end. It's hard to care about a new big bad if the only reason you're supposed to care about them is because, remember the last big bad you fought? Yeah, well, this one's even bigger and badder. Like, that goes a certain way, but doesn't go on forever. And I've talked about this before. In my opinion, the idea of having an expansion, after Endwalker especially, that's more laid back in like a summer vacation, I think that's a good idea, but I don't think they leaned into it enough. It's like, half the expansion was far more lighthearted, but then it got super dark and depressing when it came to the whole Alexandria bit. It's one of Dawntrail's greatest weaknesses, in my opinion. It's that far too often, for far too many things, they tend to go halfway with going one way or the other. They never really fully commit to going in any one singular direction. They try and like have their toes in multiple pies, and they spread themselves out a bit too thin. And I think that can truly compromise on the impact that some of these scenes are supposed to have, because for them to to really be impactful, you have to fully lean into them. And they just kinda don't. Speaking of leaning one way or the other, we have at Raiden Kaiser, who says, my biggest hot take is I'd rather them make an expansion focusing on Hildibrand, laugh out loud. Now, again, bit of a joke, personally, I wouldn't mind that. I'm a big fan of Hildibrand, and the only reason I would argue against this is that, personally, I think the charm of Hildibrand is that it's completely optional. It's one of the biggest gripes that I had with the Endwalker Hildibrand stuff, is that it was kind of mandatory if you wanted your relic weapon. I think that was a poor decision on their part. The charm of Hildibrand is that it's completely separate, so those of us who want to have that more lighthearted, over-the-top, slapstick comedy acting routine that's a nice break from the rest of the game, we can have that, but people who don't vibe with that type of content don't have to interface or interact with it whatsoever. But when you make people feel as if they have to do it all, then you'll have one of two camps, most of the time at least, in my opinion. You'll either have people who are already caught up with Hildibrand who are going to do it anyways, and then they're like, oh cool, I'll get a weapon out of this. Or you have a big subsect of people who never interacted with Hildibrand, never cared about it, didn't want to do it, but now feel as if they have to start from a Realm Reborn, work all their way up, to then be able to start grinding their relic weapon. And that's just not a good feeling. I imagine there were a few people who started Hildibrand because of this and actually came to appreciate and like it. However, I think the cons outweigh the pros in that regard. So having an entire expansion dedicated to Hildibrand, you would have to imagine that the prereq for that would be to do all of Hildibrand, which theoretically shouldn't take all that long, and that's me having my critic hat on. However, if we're just talking about what I really particularly want, the vibe I get in a Hildibrand quest is far more in line with the summer vacation vibe that I wanted out of Dawntrail. Funnily enough, especially not the Dawntrail, but the Endwalker story for Hildibrand. It was so wacky and over the top and just silly, and also had the Warrior of Light kind of hanging loose and just having fun, using a frying pan as a baseball bat to knock away bombs, chasing down UFOs, even fighting Azura. Like, that's cool. It's fun. It's wacky and whimsical. And funnily enough, there was still stakes there. And like, I get that it can be really hard for them, apparently, to actually make these Hildibrand quests be over the top with its cinematics and all that. And like, there's a chance that if you have an MSQ that is all Hildibrand humor, maybe it would grow thin for some people. I don't think it would grow thin for me if the jokes are able to all hit. It's dumb, wacky silliness, and remember what we just talked about, where Dawntrail's one of its greatest sins is that it doesn't fully commit in any one direction and tries to have its fingers and toes into too many pies? Well, it's kind of like that for the comedy, in my opinion. The comedy is very safe and neutral, in my opinion, when it comes to Dawntrail, and not over the top and wacky, like 14 can be at times, for its comedic relief, which has been seen in the MSQ before, but notably in the Hildibrand quests. So if you're going to do a summer vacation vibe, I think going in that direction and leaning more in that direction would be far more conducive to that idea. Speaking of summer vacation, we have at Deckwheeler, who says, my biggest issue is this didn't feel like a vacation. Where's my beach episode with the Scions? All we got is a giant side quest. I'm fine not being the main character, but I freaking wanted to be lounging on the beach in between helping Woot get to the throne. This goes back to a previous point I've made a few videos back, and that's the idea that I think the Rite of Succession would have been better if the only guide we had, the only objective, was to find the City of Gold. Don't have us going around collecting these starbursts, doing these various trials. Have the only goal be to find the City of Gold, and we just go meandering around all of Tyrol, talking to various peoples, talking to the tribes there, trying to gather clues for this overall mystery. And I think by having a more singular focus, with the goal simply being to find the City of Gold, it would give them more time for honest-to-God character moments, spread the wealth out a little bit more, so it's not all just focused on Wu Clement, but also, it gives it more of an opportunity to feel like a relaxing break from the Heidelin Zodiac arc. A less rigid structure with more vague ideas and objectives, and maybe you can like hone in on that feeling of going on an adventure, going through various ruins like Indiana Jones a bit better in my opinion. One of the expert dungeons, funnily enough, does a good job of this. The one in Shaloni, where you go to the ruins of the Great Serpent. I kind of wish Dawntrail had more of a feel in that regard than just going to do odd jobs for various peoples. I think it would help the overall story feel more like an adventure and something to get away from it all than, say, a conveyor belt of necessary plot points to hit, while also giving us just a chance to kick back and relax. Having these down-to-earth moments where the characters of the main party can just interact with each other are important and needed for a story this long. And because of the nature of how they executed Dawntrail's story, we were kind of forced to go plot point to plot point to plot point because it wasn't really focused on the party we had on the whole. It was focused on just developing Wuklamat, Kona, and Zoralja, and a little bit of Bakul Jaja. This next hot take is similar to what we've been talking about throughout a lot of this video, but it has an interesting nuance that I want to really get into. We have @Mayor of Stature, who says, I have several hot takes, but I'm going to leave one here that I don't see too many people talk about. I think they should have leaned far more into the low stakes idea, at least for the first half. You are essentially picking a ruler for the country, and while yes, this is a lower stakes story, at least comparatively to what we had before, this will still affect likely thousands of people. I think this quote-unquote contest should not have been to decide a ruler, or at least not give you two extremely bad antagonists. Had Bakul Jaja won, the area would likely revert back to a civil war state, with him trying to impose his will on those he views as lesser. Zoralja would have thrown his people into a world war, he'd lose, and quickly, but not before his people got massacred. These are not low stakes. They are low when compared to an existential threat, but by putting this level of threat in, it makes the trials you go on seem extremely insignificant and pointless. Zoralja still forced his people into a war, and if Bakul Jaja hadn't been reformed, still deserves to be locked away for life for the death penalty, then there's no doubt in my mind that he would have continued his crusade and continued to challenge the Dawn Servant's rule. I think it was never feasible for Dawntrail to not have stakes of some regard, but again, this goes back to one of the points I made previously in this video, that one of Dawntrail's biggest issues is that it doesn't fully commit itself one way or the other in a lot of areas, and I think the stakes idea is one of them. Because yeah, compared to fighting Meteon, the manifestation of despair for the whole universe, at the edge of the universe, riding a dragon who happens to be the villain willing to burn the world simply to have a 1v1 with us, who calls us his best friend. While yeah, the story of Dawntrail isn't that high stakes, when you look at Dawntrail, it's still rather high stakes. The whole looming threat is that the world will be plunged into war because of Zoralja waging war against it, utilizing the military forces provided by Alexandria. So the stakes are still rather high, and because they are still high objectively, you don't get that laid-back feeling that they're trying to instill within that first half. Now, I thought it was always kind of obvious that Dawntrail was going to go this way, or at least something in this regard. There would be that moment where everything hits the fan, and it's like, okay, now we have a story, yeah? Pedal to the metal, we have something to address here. And while I still personally enjoy the Alexandria bit quite a bit, I think a lot of its issues stem from that first half, because the execution just wasn't all there. And maybe if the execution was more in line with what we've been talking about throughout this video, maybe that would be more conducive to the Alexandria bit. Stakes only matter if you care about what's at stake. You can have the world be threatened over and over and over again, but I think most people out there will care more about a story where the entire stake is like one country or one town, and we really care about that location, instead of a broad, overarching, save the world story for a world we simply don't. There is a slight caveat to all this, and that is we don't know what exactly will be completely relevant down the line, or what will be of overarching importance for this story going down the line. We have a few guesses, right? Like Sphinx's crown at the end, the cup glowing with Azim's symbol, but we don't know what else could be brought back in the narrative down the line that could become drastically important. So you do have that asterisk and that caveat, but I still think at the end of the day, there would have been a way to integrate whatever that would be that's important, that we just are assuming will be at some point down the line. There's a way to integrate that into Dawntrail in a more cohesive and enjoyable way. At least for me. Because the nature of hot takes is that they're just takes at the end of the day. They're simply opinions. And I really like doing these videos because sometimes the takes can just be wildly out there and wild to react to, or they can lead to interesting discussion about topics that maybe by themselves don't warrant an entire video, but I like being able to address them. So like I said at the top of this video, please leave a comment down below with your thoughts, your opinions, your own hot takes for Final Fantasy XIV or Dawntrail or the future. I'd love to hear your thoughts, hear your takes, and maybe I'll react to them in a future video. Stay safe, have a great day. If you like this video, please leave a like and subscribe. We are closing in on 10,000 subscribers. Thank you all. I got a lot coming down the pipe when it comes to content. Hope you all stick around. Stay safe, have a great day, and I'll see you all next time. Bye-bye, everybody. Until we meet again!